Nathan Whitmore had it all: sleek sports cars, multi-million-dollar investments, and a luxurious estate tucked away in an exclusive gated community just outside of Chicago. To the world, he was the pinnacle of success, an unstoppable investor whose every decision seemed to multiply his wealth. But behind closed doors, Nathan felt suffocated. His marriage to Sophie had lost its spark. She had become a quiet presence in his massive home, a beautiful yet distant figure who no longer fueled his ambition. Determined to cut ties and start fresh, he made a firm decision: end the marriage and move forward toward even greater achievements. Yet just as he thought walking away would be easy, an unexpected truth shattered his assumptions. Sophie wasn't just another chapter in his past, she was the very salvation he had unknowingly been searching for. Nathan had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Fairview, Illinois. His father juggled 2 jobs, working as an auto mechanic by day and hauling freight at night, just to keep food on the table. His mother took on whatever work she could find, cleaning houses and babysitting for neighbors to help make ends meet. From an early age, Nathan understood how fragile financial security could be. He made a vow: he would never live in uncertainty again. With relentless determination, he secured a scholarship to Northwestern University, majoring in finance. As soon as he graduated, he set his sights on Wall Street. In New York, Nathan immersed himself in the high-stakes world of finance. He worked brutal 18-hour days, sacrificed weekends, and abandoned personal relationships in pursuit of success. And he succeeded. By the time he was 30, he returned to Chicago as a self-made millionaire. His sharp instincts and fearless investments led to the creation of Whitmore Capital, a boutique investment firm that quickly gained the trust of elite clients across the Midwest. Soon, his name graced the covers of financial magazines. He was no longer just another trader. He was the prodigy from Fairview, the man who had turned ambition into fortune. During his rapid rise, Nathan met Sophie Lancaster at a charity gala in Chicago's Gold Coast district. She was a volunteer coordinator for a children's hospital fundraiser, radiating warmth and sincerity in everything she did. A graduate of the University of Michigan with a degree in social work, Sophie had been raised in a modest Rhode Island household, where she had learned the values of kindness, empathy, and giving back. Nathan was drawn to the contrast between them, her compassionate heart against his ruthless ambition. Their whirlwind romance quickly led to a lavish wedding on the shores of Lake Michigan. In the beginning, they seemed like the perfect match: the sharp-minded financier and the selfless social worker, each offering something the other lacked. Friends admired how Sophie softened Nathan's hardened edges, while his success provided her with the resources to expand her charitable work. But life has a way of shifting the balance when you least expect it. As Nathan Whitmore's empire grew, so did his wife Sophie's passion for philanthropy. With his financial backing, she expanded her charitable efforts, launching initiatives that made a real impact. They purchased a breathtaking estate in an exclusive gated community in Lake Forest, complete with marble floors, glittering chandeliers, and an infinity pool that overlooked meticulously landscaped gardens. But as Whitmore Capital soared to new heights, Nathan became consumed by the never-ending pursuit of more. More deals, more prestige, more expansions. Late nights at the office turned into weekend flights to Asia, Europe, or Silicon Valley. Sophie, once the person who grounded him, began to fade into the background of his relentless schedule. She tried to bridge the growing distance, planning quiet dinners, weekend getaways, but Nathan was always distracted. His phone was a constant presence at their table, buzzing with urgent calls from London, Hong Kong, or New York. He would step away to negotiate deals, leaving Sophie alone in candlelit restaurants, picking at meals meant for 2. At first, she convinced herself that things would get better, but frustration gradually replaced hope, and the small cracks in their relationship grew into undeniable fractures. While Sophie's philanthropic work flourished, she founded the Whitmore Community Initiative to support underprivileged youth in Chicago. Nathan was noticeably absent from her events. He wrote generous checks, but rarely showed up in person, always citing work obligations. When they were together, conversations felt strained. Nathan assumed that as long as he provided financial security, Sophie had no reason to complain. What he failed to notice was how deeply disconnected she felt. On the rare nights he was home, his mind was elsewhere, checking market reports, responding to late-night emails. The silence between them was no longer comfortable. It was heavy with unspoken words. Sophie confided in her close friend, Charlotte Reed, whom she had met through charity work. Charlotte listened patiently, always encouraging Sophie to express her feelings to Nathan. But whenever she tried, he became defensive. "Why are we even having this conversation?" he would sigh, brushing off her concerns. "Everything is fine." But everything was not fine, and neither of them realized just how deep the rift had grown, until Nathan, blinded by his ambition, made a choice that would change their lives forever. It was a sweltering August afternoon when Nathan first uttered the word divorce. He had just returned from an exhausting 3-day negotiation in Tokyo, closing a multi-million-dollar hedge fund deal. Jet-lagged and irritable, he stepped onto their patio, where Sophie sat sipping iced tea, the sun casting a soft glow around her. Normally, seeing her would bring a sense of homecoming, but today all he felt was an inexplicable heaviness in his chest. Sophie looked up, her warm smile easing into place as she set down her glass. "You're back," she said gently. "How did it go?" Nathan shrugged, dropping into the chair beside her. "Fine, the deal's done, but it was draining." She reached for his hand, her touch light but sincere. "I'm proud of you. I know it's exhausting, but look how far you've come." Instead of responding, Nathan pulled his hand away, leaning back to stare out at their perfectly trimmed hedges and pristine lawn. The life they had built together looked flawless from the outside, but inside, something was breaking. The emerald green lawn stretched before Nathan Whitmore, a pristine symbol of the life he had meticulously built. Everything in his world was polished, curated to exude success, from his marble-floored mansion to his thriving business empire. Even his marriage had to fit the mold of perfection. And yet, standing there on the patio, he felt suffocated by it all. For the first time, he wondered if Sophie was part of the weight pressing down on him, rather than the relief he had once sought. "You know," he began, his voice edged with tension, "it's strange. You say you're proud of me for working myself to the bone, but I can't remember the last time I came home and actually felt at home." Sophie frowned, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean?" The frustration inside him surged, spilling out in words he hadn't planned. "I'm always on the move. We barely talk anymore. And when we do, it's about your charity events or the house renovations. There's nothing between us. No spark, no excitement. I just feel trapped." Her expression fell. "Trapped? By me?" Nathan hesitated, a pang of guilt tightening his chest, but resentment drowned it out. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe we rushed into this. I was so focused on creating this perfect life that I never stopped to ask myself if it's what I really wanted. You have your world, I have mine, and most of the time, we're just strangers living under the same roof." Tears welled in Sophie's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she steadied herself, her voice soft but firm. "If that's how you feel, then let's work on it, Nathan. Let's fix this. I still believe in us." He looked away, jaw clenched. "I don't know if there's anything left to fix." The words tasted bitter, but he forced them out. "I've been thinking maybe we should consider a divorce." The word landed like a thunderclap between them. Sophie's breath hitched as she stared at him, searching his face for any trace of hesitation, any sign that he didn't truly mean it. But all she found was exhaustion and frustration. "Do you really want that?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "Or are you just overwhelmed?" Nathan exhaled sharply. "I need space," he said. "Time to think, to figure out if we're actually right for each other or if we're just clinging to something that's already gone. I'm not saying this is final, but we need to be honest with ourselves." Sophie swallowed hard, the lump in her throat growing heavier. She had known he had been distant lately, but she had never imagined he would talk about ending their marriage so casually. "If you need space, take it," she whispered. "But don't throw away everything we've built on a whim." Nathan pushed back from the table and rose to his feet. A part of him wanted to comfort her, to take back the words that had just escaped his lips. But another part, the part that had been whispering for months that freedom was the key to his happiness, held him back. "I'll be in my study," he said quietly. "I'll stay in the guest room for now." Then he turned and walked away. Sophie remained frozen on the patio, her glass of iced tea forgotten beside her. The world around her, the manicured gardens, the grand estate, the illusion of perfection, remained intact. But inside, everything had begun to unravel. Their marriage was now teetering on the edge, and Nathan seemed ready to push it over. In the days that followed Nathan's shocking declaration, an eerie silence settled over the Whitmore estate. Even the housekeepers, gardeners, and occasional private chefs seemed to tread more carefully, as if sensing the tension that thickened the air. Sophie, determined to maintain composure, buried herself in her work. She finalized plans for the upcoming Whitmore Community Initiative Gala, visited hospital wards where her volunteers worked, and met with local businesses to secure sponsorships. To the outside world, she remained the poised and gracious philanthropist. But beneath the surface, she was barely holding herself together. Nathan, on the other hand, threw himself deeper into his business. He drowned in spreadsheets, back-to-back meetings, and high-stakes negotiations, convincing himself that if he worked hard enough, he could outrun the chaos brewing in his personal life. Neither of them realized that avoiding the problem wouldn't make it go away. Nathan Whitmore buried himself in work to drown out the turmoil brewing inside him. Avoiding Sophie became second nature. He left home early in the morning, returned late at night, or sometimes didn't come home at all. He justified his absence with excuses: late meetings, urgent deadlines, efficiency. Eventually, he found a more convenient escape. Booking a luxury suite at the Grand Regent, an upscale hotel in downtown Chicago, telling himself it was simply practical for business. One night, while sitting in the dim glow of his hotel room, his phone rang. The name on the screen made him pause. Mark Donovan. A veteran wealth consultant, Mark had been Nathan's mentor during his early days on Wall Street. They hadn't spoken in months. "Nathan," Mark's deep voice came through the receiver after a brief exchange of pleasantries. "I hear rumors you're looking to expand Whitmore Capital into real estate investments." Nathan leaned forward, intrigued. "I might be," he admitted. "I've got a potential partner from Los Angeles who's looking for a joint venture." Mark continued. "Let's grab dinner tomorrow and talk." Nathan agreed without hesitation. Any new opportunity was a welcome distraction. The next evening, they met at an upscale steakhouse in Chicago's Gold Coast district. The conversation began with business, expansion plans, investment strategies, projected profits. But after a while, Mark leaned back in his chair, swirling the whiskey in his glass, his expression shifting from professional to personal. "You don't look great, kid." His eyes studied Nathan carefully. "Dark circles under your eyes, permanent scowl on your face. This business eating you alive more than usual?" Nathan forced a dry chuckle. "Just a rough patch. I'll manage." Mark raised an eyebrow. "And Sophie?" Nathan's stomach twisted. "We're on shaky ground," he admitted. "Thinking about a divorce, actually." Mark set his glass down, his gaze sharp with concern. "A divorce?" He shook his head. "Sophie's a rare one, Nathan. What happened?" Nathan shrugged, bristling at the question. "We've grown apart. She's busy with her charity work. I'm constantly traveling. We barely talk anymore." Mark studied him for a moment before speaking, his voice calm but firm. "Is that a reason to walk away, or is it a sign that you need to figure out why the marriage is falling apart?" Nathan stiffened. "I don't need a lecture," he said, his tone clipped. "I need clarity, and the more I think about it, the more I realize maybe we were never right for each other." Mark sighed, tapping his fingers against the table. "I'm not trying to lecture you. Just consider this. You've spent years building your career, and Sophie has spent years building a life with you. Even with her philanthropic work, she still sees you as her partner. So ask yourself this: will walking away actually make you happy? Or are you just running from the parts of yourself you don't want to face?" A flicker of irritation surged in Nathan, but he pushed it down. "Thanks for the concern," he said, signaling for the check. "But it's my decision. Let's focus on the real estate deal." Mark nodded, though his eyes reflected unspoken concern. The conversation returned to business, but the tension lingered. Later that night, Nathan sat alone in the dim glow of his hotel suite, unable to sleep. His mind felt restless, his thoughts tangled. He picked up his phone and absently scrolled through recent photos from Whitmore Capital's charity events. Sophie appeared in several of them, radiant and confident, shaking hands with business leaders, hugging children at the hospital. His thumb hovered over one particular image, Sophie, standing on stage at a fundraiser, speaking passionately about her community initiative. He remembered that day vividly. The way her eyes had shone with determination as she pitched the idea to him. The way she had spoken about changing lives, about using their wealth for something greater than just financial gain. At the time, he had felt proud. Proud of her sincerity. Proud to stand beside someone with so much heart. Now, as he stared at the screen, an unsettling question crept into his mind. Had he lost sight of what really mattered? Nathan Whitmore had always believed in control. He controlled his finances, his career, his future. But now, as he sat alone in his dimly lit hotel suite, staring at the city skyline, he felt something slipping through his grasp. For the first time, he wondered, was Sophie better off without him? Did she deserve more than a husband who wanted out the moment things got difficult? Was it truly freedom he craved, or was he simply running from the weight of emotional intimacy? The questions unsettled him, but each time doubt crept in, he pushed it away with sheer stubbornness. He was Nathan Whitmore, a self-made millionaire, an unstoppable force in the world of finance. If a relationship no longer served him, wasn't it logical to end it? But logic rarely ruled the heart. And as the night stretched on, Nathan realized that his carefully constructed world was beginning to unravel. While Nathan wrestled with his own demons in his downtown office, Sophie was battling hers at home. She knew she couldn't force him to stay if he was determined to leave. But deep down, she sensed that something else was eating away at him, something bigger than just a failing marriage. She had seen it in his eyes, the hollow expression, the restless energy, the way he barely looked at her when he did come home. His presence feeling more like a shadow than a partner. One morning, she met her close friend Charlotte Reed at Maple and Ash Cafe, a cozy spot in downtown Chicago. Over steaming lattes, Sophie finally put words to the fears that had been haunting her. "He's talking about divorce," she confessed. "He barely speaks to me anymore, and I don't think it's just about us. I feel like he's carrying something I can't reach." Charlotte listened intently, stirring her coffee. "Have you suggested counseling?" Sophie nodded. "He won't even consider it. Says there's no point if he's already leaning toward ending things." Charlotte exhaled, her expression thoughtful. "Then maybe it's time to focus on you. If he wants space, give it to him, but don't lose yourself in the process. Keep doing your philanthropic work. Keep being you. If Nathan is meant to be part of your future, he'll realize what he's throwing away." Sophie swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "I'm scared," she whispered. "He used to be so loving. Now it feels like he's slipping away, and I don't know how to hold on." As the weeks passed, Sophie buried herself in her work, throwing her energy into the Whitmore Community Initiative's most ambitious project yet, a charity gala at the Chicago Public Library, aimed at raising funds for a children's counseling center in a struggling neighborhood. She partnered with local businesses, secured top chefs to donate their culinary talents, and recruited artists to auction off their work. The event was shaping up to be the pinnacle of her philanthropic efforts, a night that would make a real difference. Meanwhile, Nathan had his own priorities. He was preparing for the launch of Whitmore Capital's new real estate division, securing investors, and attending high-profile forums. He posed for financial magazine covers, hosted lavish dinner parties for potential backers, and convinced himself that building an empire, was all that truly mattered. He ignored Sophie's calls, deflecting anything that reminded him of the life he was leaving behind. His focus was singular, creating a brand so powerful that no personal scandal, not even a divorce, could overshadow it. Then, one afternoon, a package arrived at the Whitmore estate, addressed to Sophie. She opened it to find a preliminary divorce agreement, straight from Nathan's legal team. Her heart pounded as she flipped through the pages, cold, calculated clauses dividing their assets, reducing their life together to bullet points and fine print. For a moment, something inside her cracked, but instead of breaking down, she felt something else. Determination. This might be the push she needed. Sophie Whitmore wasn't ready to give up. Somewhere beneath the cold exterior, the man she had fallen in love with still existed. She just had to find a way to reach him. Under the guidance of Charlotte Reed and a few trusted colleagues, Sophie made a decision. She would keep the looming divorce a secret until after the upcoming charity gala. Months of hard work had gone into the event, and a public scandal could jeopardize everything. But more than that, she needed time. Time to formulate a plan. Time to understand what was truly haunting Nathan. During one of her late nights in his home office, searching for something, anything, that might give her insight, she stumbled upon an old binder tucked away in a cabinet. The label read, "Family Accounts." Curious, she flipped it open. Inside, she found a collection of letters, handwritten by Nathan's father, a man who had passed away years before. She read in silence, her heart tightening with each word. The letters spoke of desperation, unpaid hospital bills, mounting debts, a foreclosure that had forced them out of their home. A lump formed in Sophie's throat as realization struck. Nathan wasn't just obsessed with success, he was terrified of failure. Every sleepless night, every relentless deal, every frantic business trip, he was still running, not from her, not from their marriage, but from the ghosts of his childhood. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the ink on the page. She couldn't undo Nathan's past. She couldn't force him to face his demons. But maybe, just maybe, she could help him see that he didn't have to fight them alone. With the gala fast approaching, Sophie made a silent vow. This would be her last stand, no matter the cost. The Whitmore Community Initiative Gala was the pinnacle of Sophie's philanthropic efforts. A night designed to raise funds for a children's counseling center in one of Chicago's most underserved neighborhoods. The Chicago Public Library's Grand Hall shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Fresh floral arrangements adorned the towering columns, while elegantly dressed guests mingled over trays of champagne and gourmet hors d'oeuvres. The city's most influential figures, donors, officials, business elites, had gathered to celebrate Sophie's work. A string quartet played softly in the background, adding to the air of refinement. And yet, beneath her poised exterior, Sophie was a bundle of nerves. She stole a glance at the massive clock above the entrance. Nathan was already an hour late. Her heart clenched. Part of her prayed he would walk through the doors, that he would show up, not just for the sake of appearances, but for her. Another part feared his arrival would only confirm what she already knew, that they were nothing more than a fractured couple putting on a show for the world. Then, nearly 2 hours into the event, he arrived. Nathan strode into the room, exuding effortless charm in a sharp black tuxedo. His presence commanded immediate attention. Photographers swarmed him, flashes illuminating the tension hidden beneath his composed expression. Sophie inhaled sharply and stepped away from her conversation with a city official, making her way toward him. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, her voice steadier than she felt. Nathan gave a brief nod. Of course, didn't want to embarrass the initiative. Her chest tightened at the formality in his tone. "I really appreciate it," she murmured. Before either of them could say more, a familiar voice interrupted. "Amanda, fantastic job organizing this event." Sophie turned to see Michael Redwood, the silver-haired CEO of Redwood Enterprises and one of the evening's most significant donors. He shook Sophie's hand enthusiastically before turning to Nathan. "And Whitmore Capital, always a name we respect. Glad to see you here." Nathan offered a practiced smile. "Pleasure to be here, Michael." Sophie swallowed hard as she watched him slip effortlessly into his public persona. He was polished, controlled, untouchable. But did he even realize what he was about to lose? As Sophie excused herself to handle a minor issue with the event staff, Nathan Whitmore found himself standing alone, swirling his champagne, his gaze drifting over the crowd. Everywhere he looked, he saw admiration for her. Sophie was in her element, effortlessly charming donors, passionately discussing the foundation's goals. She radiated warmth, grace, and unwavering purpose. A sharp pang of something, regret, stabbed at him, but he pushed it down, unwilling to examine it too closely. An hour later, the lights dimmed, and Sophie stepped onto the stage. A hush fell over the audience as she began her keynote speech. She spoke about the vision behind the Children's Counseling Center, about families struggling to access mental health care. Her voice trembled as she shared real stories, children who had been saved, Parents who had found hope when they thought all was lost. From the sidelines, Nathan watched. A strange mix of pride and envy stirred in him. Her ability to connect with people, to care so deeply, it was mesmerizing, and yet it felt so foreign to him. For a brief, fleeting moment, he wondered, was he making a mistake? But then, reality pulled him back. He was exhausted. His empire demanded everything from him. And Sophie's world, as noble as it was, had always felt like an afterthought in his life. As she ended her speech with a heartfelt thank you and introduced a special musical performance, thunderous applause filled the hall. She stepped down from the stage, immediately surrounded by well-wishers. Reporters clamored for interviews, donors showered her with praise. The entire scene felt like a tribute to her unshakable compassion. And then, out of nowhere, trouble arrived. A reporter, camera rolling, sidled up to Nathan. "Mr. Whitmore, any truth to the rumors about trouble in your marriage?" Nathan's blood ran cold. His grip tightened around his champagne glass. "Where did you hear that?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. The reporter shrugged. "Sources say you've been staying at hotels. We were hoping for a comment." A suffocating silence crept into the room. In the corner of his vision, Nathan saw Sophie freeze. Their eyes met across the room, hers wide with horror. A ripple of whispers began spreading through the crowd. For the first time in his career, Nathan, always so smooth under pressure, stammered. "No comment." Sophie, face flushed, rushed forward and gently placed herself between him and the reporter. "This evening is about the Children's Counseling Center," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning beneath her skin. "We're not discussing personal matters here." But the damage had already been done. The whispers grew louder. Donors exchanged wary glances. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing every second of the tension hanging in the air. And in that instant, Nathan realized their problems were no longer just between them. Their unraveling had become public. Feeling trapped, exposed, and utterly cornered, Nathan downed the rest of his champagne in one gulp. Then, without another word, he turned and slipped out of the library. Sophie watched him go, her heart in her throat, her hands trembling at her sides. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. This night was supposed to be a beacon of hope. Instead, it had become the stage for the collapse of their marriage, in front of the entire city. By morning, the damage had spread like wildfire. Gossip columns, business blogs, and social media buzzed with speculation about the Whitmore marriage. Pictures from the gala flooded the internet. Sophie, radiant and poised at the microphone. Nathan, tense and withdrawn, barely meeting her gaze. The world now knew what Sophie had been desperately trying to keep private. And Nathan, for all his efforts to control the narrative, had just lost control of the most important thing in his life. The rumors spread like wildfire. Some tabloids claimed Nathan Whitmore had fallen for someone else. Others suggested Sophie had become too powerful in her own right, eclipsing her husband's success. The headlines were relentless. Whitmore Capital, a storm behind closed doors. Charity in chaos. Is the Whitmore marriage on the brink? At Whitmore Capital, Nathan tried to maintain his composure, focusing on finalizing negotiations for his company's new real estate division. But the hushed whispers in the hallways and the subtle, lingering stares from employees made it clear. His personal life had become office gossip. Then came the email. Polite but pointed, the board of directors expressed their concern about the negative media attention. If a messy divorce dragged the company's name through the mud, it could cost them millions, especially from family-oriented brands that wanted nothing to do with scandal. Meanwhile, Sophie faced her own storm. Calls flooded in from sponsors of the Whitmore Community Initiative. Some reassured her of their continued support, praising her resilience, but others voiced hesitation, worried that the drama surrounding her marriage might overshadow the cause. Every conversation left her drained. Charlotte Reed and Mark Donovan both reached out, offering sympathy and advice, but Sophie barely had the energy to respond with more than a polite thank you. That afternoon, feeling utterly lost, Sophie found herself sitting across from Dr. Alia Rosen, her longtime therapist. She had booked the appointment in desperation, hoping for clarity. Tearfully, she recounted everything: the gala disaster, the divorce papers, Nathan's emotional detachment. It's like he's built an impenetrable wall around himself, she murmured, clutching a tissue. And every time I try to reach him, he pulls away even more. I'm torn between letting him go and fighting for him. Dr. Rosen's voice was gentle. What do you want most, Sophie? Is it truly the marriage? Or is it the fear that Nathan is going to self-destruct under the pressure? Sophie hesitated. I love him, she admitted, and I see that he's hurting. But I can't let him drag me down if he's already decided I'm not part of his future. Dr. Rosen nodded thoughtfully. Then perhaps it's time to focus on your own well-being first. Love him if you must, but not at the expense of yourself. That evening, when Sophie returned home, the mansion was eerily quiet. Nathan's assistant had sent her a curt email earlier in the day. He had left for New York for an investor meeting. Her gaze fell on the stack of unopened mail in the foyer. Among the envelopes was an invitation to a high-profile real estate conference in Manhattan. Nathan was listed as a keynote speaker. Sophie let out a soft, bitter laugh. He was moving forward with business as usual, as if their marriage wasn't crumbling beneath them. Unable to sleep, she wandered through the dimly lit halls of the mansion, her footsteps echoing against the marble floors. Eventually, she found herself standing at the doorway of Nathan's study. Flipping on the lamp, she let her eyes drift over the space, the towering bookshelves stacked with finance literature, the trophies commemorating Whitmore Capital's achievements, the mahogany desk meticulously organized. And then she saw it. A framed photograph, lying face down. She reached for it, turning it over in her hands. It was their wedding photo. The two of them, toasting under a canopy of fairy lights, their faces glowing with love and excitement. Tears blurred Sophie's vision. How had they gotten to this point? Setting the photo down, she reached for one of the desk drawers. To her surprise, it was locked. Frowning, she searched through the desk until she found a spare key Nathan often kept hidden beneath a stack of papers. The lock clicked open. Inside, beneath neatly filed business documents, was a small, worn envelope. She pulled it out, her heart pounding. Inside were personal records, old medical documents, therapist receipts from years ago. Sophie's breath caught in her throat. Nathan had been seeing a therapist? And he had never told her? Sophie Whitmore clutched the papers in her trembling hands, her heart aching as she scanned Nathan's hurried scribbles. Among the scattered notes and financial calculations, one phrase stood out. What if I fail? She exhaled sharply, the weight of those 4 words sinking into her chest. Beneath Nathan's polished confidence, beneath the empire he had built, lay a crippling fear of failure. A fear so deep it had driven him to push away everyone who cared about him. For the first time, she truly understood. But understanding wasn't enough. Because no matter how much she wanted to help, no matter how much she loved him, if Nathan refused to confront his own demons, then all the good intentions in the world wouldn't save their marriage. And so a different question haunted her. Did she have the strength to walk away? To let him learn his lessons the hard way, even if it meant losing him forever? Weeks passed, and Nathan's travel schedule became more frantic than ever. Manhattan for the real estate conference, Chicago for investor meetings, London for a private equity summit. Each city provided a temporary escape, away from the swirling rumors, away from the whispers at Whitmore Capital, and most of all, away from Sophie's disappointed gaze. But no matter where he went, the headlines followed. He told himself he didn't care. Yet every time he caught a glimpse of Sophie's name in the news or saw an update from her foundation, a sharp pang of guilt gnawed at him. She was moving forward. The Children's Counseling Center was well underway, and Sophie had begun sharing heartfelt stories of the families they were helping. The comment sections overflowed with praise, an angel for Chicago's most vulnerable. Meanwhile, what was he doing? Closing another deal? Expanding another division? For the first time, he wasn't sure if any of it actually mattered. One evening, after finishing a grueling meeting in London's financial district, Nathan found himself wandering along the River Thames, the city lights shimmering on the water. The sight reminded him of home. The way the Charles River looked at night, back when he and Sophie would take long walks, dreaming about the future. Lost in thought, he barely noticed the quaint little cafe until a familiar voice pulled him back to reality. Mark Donovan. Nathan's old mentor sat at an outdoor table, a knowing expression on his face. Nathan had been avoiding him since arriving in London. Still, Mark gestured for him to join. Too exhausted to resist, Nathan sank into the chair. "You look like a man carrying the weight of his own regrets," Mark said, studying him over his coffee. Nathan let out a dry laugh. "You don't stop, do you?" Mark waved over a waiter and ordered another coffee, for Nathan, not for himself. Then after a pause, he spoke. "Look, I know you hate unsolicited advice," he said, his voice quieter now. "But have you even considered that your personal meltdown is costing you more than you think?" Nathan scoffed. Mark continued, undeterred. "Your board is nervous, your staff senses something's off, and you're about to lose a woman that most men would fight to keep by their side." Nathan smirked bitterly. "Well, if they want her, they can have her. We don't fit anymore." Mark leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Don't fit," he repeated. "Or are you afraid you'll never live up to the man she believes you can be?" Nathan's smirk vanished, his jaw clenched. "That's nonsense," he snapped. But his pulse pounded at the truth in Mark's words. Mark sighed, leaning back. "A friend in Chicago told me Sophie is pushing forward with the counseling center. She's out there, actually changing lives. And what are you doing, Nathan? Stacking up more deals, chasing more money? That's not a life. It's a treadmill you don't know how to get off." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant chatter of passing tourists. Mark rose to pay the bill. "You can keep running if you want," he said, dropping a few bills on the table. "But at some point you have to ask yourself, what exactly are you running from?" Then he walked away, leaving Nathan alone with his thoughts. And for the first time in a long time, Nathan didn't have an answer. Nathan Whitmore sat in silence. Mark's words were playing in his mind. And for the first time in a long time, he let himself remember. He thought of Sophie, staying up late to help him refine his pitch, when Whitmore Capital was just an idea, of how she had believed in his dream, championing his ambition before anyone else did. She had never asked him to slow down, never demanded that he choose her over success. All she had ever wanted was to be part of his journey. And somewhere along the way, he had decided that was too much to ask. That night, alone in his London hotel room, Nathan found himself scrolling through old photos on his phone, snapshots of their early years together. Then, he stumbled upon a short video. It was from an anniversary trip to Cape Cod. Sophie was laughing, struggling to hold onto her sun hat as the wind threatened to snatch it away. He could hear his own voice in the background, trying to steady the camera, teasing her about the hat. Her laughter was carefree, unfiltered, filled with love. And in that moment, Nathan felt the full weight of what he was about to lose. When was the last time he had heard that laughter? When was the last time he had been the reason for it? A sharp pang of regret struck him. For months he had convinced himself that leaving Sophie would solve everything, that his fears, his anxieties, his relentless drive for more would somehow disappear once he was free. But now, for the first time, he saw the truth. Divorcing Sophie wouldn't erase his insecurities. It would only make them louder. He closed his eyes, phone still in his hand, as a single thought cut through the noise. What if Sophie wasn't the obstacle to his happiness, but the key? The next morning, without hesitation, Nathan booked the first flight back to Chicago. He had no plan, no rehearsed speech, just an overwhelming urgency. He needed to see her before it was too late. He arrived at the Whitmore estate late in the afternoon, jet-lagged and uneasy, but something felt off. The house was too quiet, no staff moving about, no sounds from the kitchen. And then, he noticed the little things missing. The framed photos from the mantel, her favorite throw blanket from the couch, even some of the books from the shelves. A sudden panic gripped his chest. He called her name. No answer. He grabbed his phone and dialed. Straight to voicemail. Had she already left him? Was he too late? Then a memory surfaced. She had been spending more and more time at the new children's counseling center in South Chicago. Without bothering to change out of his rumpled suit, Nathan grabbed his car keys and sped into the city. When he pulled up in front of the renovated community building, Sophie's SUV was parked out front. Nathan exhaled, realizing just how hard his heart had been pounding. He stepped inside, cautiously following the sound of laughter and conversation. And then there she was, in the middle of a half-finished reception area, holding color swatches, surrounded by a group of volunteers. Her hair was pulled up into a messy bun, a few strands falling loose, paint smudged her jeans, and still, she was radiant. She wasn't just existing, she was thriving. Nathan's chest tightened. Then, her eyes found him. And just like that, her smile faded. Slowly, she excused herself from the group and walked toward him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing here?" Nathan swallowed. I just got back from London." His voice felt unsteady. "I wanted to see you." Her posture remained stiff. "Well, you found me." Silence stretched between them. Nathan cleared his throat. "Can we talk in private?" A pause. Then Sophie gave a short nod and turned, leading him down a hallway to a small, unoccupied office. The walls were bare. A thin layer of dust coated the windowsills. The faint smell of fresh paint lingered in the air. She folded her arms, her expression calm but guarded. "All right," she said quietly. "Talk." Nathan Whitmore took a slow, steady breath. "Look, I'm sorry for everything." Sophie stood before him, arms still crossed, her expression unreadable. He swallowed hard. "The gala, the rumors pushing you away, I know how badly I messed this up." Her eyes flashed with hurt. "That's putting it lightly. You wanted a divorce, Nathan." He lowered his gaze. "I thought it was the only way out of my own head. I convinced myself you were holding me back, but that was a lie. The truth is, the problem was never you." Sophie's lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. "It was me," he admitted. "My fear of failure, my fear of going back to where I came from, my fear of never being enough." For the first time, her stance softened, but her guard remained. "I tried to help you," she said quietly. "So many times, but you wouldn't let me in." Nathan nodded, shame settling deep in his chest. "I know, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm here, and I want to try to fix this." Silence stretched between them, thick with unresolved pain and flickers of something else. Finally, Sophie spoke, her voice shaking. "Why now? Because the tabloids caught on to our problems? Because your investors are getting nervous?" Nathan let out a slow breath. "Maybe that's what forced me to see how much I could lose, but it's more than that." He stepped closer. "I'm done running. I want to face my fears. I want to let you in, if you'll have me." Sophie closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "Nathan, I can't just open my arms and pretend everything is fine. I'm exhausted." Her voice cracked. "I built something good here, and it took every ounce of strength I had to keep going while you were busy tearing us apart." His heart clenched. "I understand," he murmured, "but I love you." He exhaled, shaking his head at his own mistakes. "I always have, even when I was too blind and arrogant to show it." A half-bitter laugh escaped her. "Love isn't just words, Nathan. It's action." She met his gaze, her expression unwavering. "If you want me to believe in us again, you need to prove it. That means counseling, honesty, actually being here, not disappearing to some hotel or jetting off to another country whenever things get hard." Nathan nodded without hesitation. "Anything. I'll do whatever it takes. Just, please, let's try." They stood there in the quiet, dusty office of the nearly finished counseling center, the very project Sophie had poured her soul into. The same project Nathan had ignored. Slowly, tentatively, she reached out, placing a hand on his cheek. Nathan closed his eyes at her touch, emotions swelling in his chest. Maybe this was a beginning. Maybe it was too late. But for once, Nathan Whitmore was willing to take a gamble on love rather than success. True to his word, Nathan made changes, real ones. He canceled a string of unnecessary business trips. He delegated more responsibilities at Whitmore Capital, and he found a highly regarded marriage counselor in Cambridge, Dr. Eleanor Kim, a soft-spoken but perceptive therapist. Their first session was awkward. Nathan fidgeted in his seat, unused to vulnerability. Sophie sat stiffly beside him, arms crossed, her eyes wary. But Dr. Kim's questions were sharp and compassionate, forcing them to finally articulate what had been left unsaid for so long. Over the weeks, the truths began to surface. Nathan admitted to a crippling fear of failure, a fear that had consumed him since childhood, one that drove him to chase every deal, even at the expense of his relationships. Sophie spoke of her resentment, how she had felt more like a symbol in his life, rather than a true partner. They argued, they cried, they comforted each other, and slowly, painfully, the cracks between them began to mend. Therapy had forced Nathan Whitmore to confront truths he had buried for years. But outside of those sessions mattered more than words. So he started showing up. He visited the Children's Counseling Center in South Chicago regularly, helping Sophie paint walls, meet with contractors, and oversee renovations. For the first time, he truly watched her work. She wasn't just building a center, she was building hope. He saw the way children's eyes lit up when they saw the progress, how they clung to Sophie as if she were a hero. He listened as she explained the center's long-term vision, educational programs, mental health support, job training for struggling parents. And something inside him stirred, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of genuine admiration. At Whitmore Capital, his employees began to notice the shift. He asked about their families, their goals, things he had never prioritized before. Then, in a move that shocked his board of directors, Nathan launched an internal philanthropy initiative, matching employees' charitable donations. Some called it a PR stunt, but Nathan knew better. For the first time, he wasn't just chasing profit, he was trying to build something meaningful. And as the press took notice, the headlines changed. Nathan Whitmore, a change of heart? From scandal to redemption. The cynics could say what they wanted. Nathan wasn't doing this for them. One rainy afternoon, Nathan and Sophie found themselves in the attic of their estate, sorting through old boxes. Memories surrounded them, forgotten photographs from their early years together. A spontaneous road trip to Cape Cod. A charity gala where they had danced all night. Lazy Sunday mornings making pancakes in their tiny first apartment. Each memory was a reminder, not just of who they had been, but of what they had lost. They laughed at their terrible hairstyles. Sophie teased Nathan about his cocky younger self. And for the first time in years, nostalgia didn't hurt, it felt warm. Then, in a dusty corner of the attic, Nathan noticed something he had long forgotten. A guitar case. "I can't believe I still have this," he murmured, opening it to reveal a worn acoustic guitar he hadn't touched in years. Sophie's eyes lit up. "You used to play for me all the time," she said softly. "You even wrote that ridiculous song about us living by the sea someday." Nathan chuckled, strumming a few rusty chords. His fingers stumbled over the strings, but the sound filled the attic with a quiet, nostalgic warmth. Sophie placed a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe we can still find that dream." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Their reconciliation wasn't a fairy tale. They still had differences. Some nights, old wounds reopened, and harsh words slipped out. The specter of divorce papers still loomed in the background, a reminder that if they couldn't rebuild trust, the past might repeat itself. But they were making a conscious choice, every single day, to step into each other's worlds again, to share vulnerabilities, to create small moments of intimacy. And as the days passed, Nathan finally understood. Real success wasn't about dominating the market or accumulating wealth. It was about having someone who believed in you. And Sophie, cautiously but genuinely, began to trust him again, not because of his words, but because of his actions. Together, they weren't fixing their marriage. They were building something new. And just as they were learning to move forward, step by step, the counseling center neared completion, a physical symbol of growth, healing, and second chances. For the community, for the children, and for them. The final coat of paint had dried. The donated furniture had arrived, carefully placed in the counseling center's bright, welcoming rooms. The small library was now stocked with books on mental health, parenting, and personal growth, a space designed to offer knowledge, comfort, and hope. As the opening day approached, Sophie Whitmore and her team of volunteers organized a soft launch event, inviting community members to tour the space and learn about the programs soon to begin. Nathan stood near the entrance, watching as she addressed a room filled with families, city officials, and even some of Whitmore Capital's biggest clients. investors who had contributed to the center's funding and now wanted to see where their donations had gone. Her voice carried with confident warmth, the same quality that had first drawn him to her. And yet, standing there, truly listening, he realized something painfully obvious. He had spent years admiring Sophie's strength, but had never fully appreciated it. As he glanced around the space, the carefully chosen decor, the thoughtful details designed to make people feel safe, he felt something shift inside him. This was more than a philanthropic project. This was her heart, made tangible. A reflection of everything she stood for: empathy, empowerment, and unwavering hope. And for the first time, Nathan truly saw it. A silent promise. After the event, the couple mingled with guests. Charlotte Reed, Sophie's ever-loyal friend, greeted them both with a warm hug. "This place is incredible," she said, beaming. "And I can see how much stronger the two of you are now." Sophie smiled, her eyes meeting Nathan's. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. A silent thank you passed between them. They had come so far from the brink of divorce. Though the legal papers still existed, tucked away in a drawer somewhere, neither of them felt the need to finalize them anymore. A moment of truth. As the event wound down and guests began to leave, Sophie led Nathan into a small therapy room tucked away in the center. The walls were painted a soft shade of blue, designed to bring calm. A cozy bookshelf stood in one corner. 2 plush chairs faced each other, separated by a simple wooden table. She let out a slow breath. "This is my favorite spot in the whole center," she confessed. "It's where parents and children can come and just talk." Nathan nodded. "It's peaceful." She hesitated, then turned to face him fully. "Nathan, I just want to say thank you. Not just for donating, but for actually being here." Her voice caught slightly. It reminds me of why I fell in love with you. Your vision, your passion. When you truly care about something, you give it everything." Emotion surged in Nathan's chest as he reached for her hands. His own trembled slightly. "I almost lost you," he murmured, "because I was too afraid to see beyond my own fears." He swallowed, his voice rough with emotion. "If anyone saved someone here, Sophie, it was you. You saved me from myself." For a moment, they stood in quiet understanding, hearts pounding in sync. Then, a gentle knock on the door. Nathan sighed, stepping back as Mark Donovan peeked in, smiling broadly. "Hate to interrupt," Mark said with a smirk, "but the mayor wants a quick word with both of you." Sophie laughed softly. "Of course, let's go." As she turned to leave, Nathan lingered for just a second longer. Then, before stepping out of the room, he glanced at her and asked, "You ready for this next chapter?" Sophie met his gaze, her eyes shining. "Absolutely." A final choice. A few days later, they sat side by side in their lawyer's office. The preliminary divorce agreement lay untouched on the table between them. Elizabeth Ang, their attorney, folded her hands and looked at them carefully. "So, what do you want to do about these documents?" Nathan turned to Sophie. She met his eyes, no hesitation this time. And in silent agreement, he reached forward, sliding the papers back toward Elizabeth. "We'd like to withdraw the petition," he said. "We're committed to working on our marriage." Sophie placed her hand over his, her voice steady. "We've started therapy, and for the first time in a long time, we're really listening to each other. We believe there's a future for us, together." Elizabeth smiled warmly. "I'm happy to hear that. I'll handle the paperwork." As they stepped out of the office and into the afternoon light, Nathan felt something he hadn't in a long time. Relief. And this time, he wasn't running from it. He was embracing it. Nathan Whitmore looked at Sophie, the woman who had stood by him through everything. She had always been kind, relentless in her compassion, and unwavering in her belief that people could grow beyond their limitations. For so long he had been searching for something, chasing success, running from his fears, convinced that freedom would bring him happiness. But the truth had been right in front of him all along. Sophie wasn't just his wife. She was his partner, his equal, his home. Hand in hand, they stepped into the crisp Chicago afternoon, the sun warming their faces. Ahead of them lay the unknown, challenges in business, in life, and in their ever-evolving love story. But now, for the first time, Nathan wasn't afraid of what lay ahead, because this time, they would face it together. Their love had been tested by fire, and it had emerged stronger than ever. Life often tests us in ways we don't expect. Nathan Whitmore learned this lesson when he almost lost everything he had once taken for granted. In his relentless pursuit of success, he had nearly pushed away the one person who had always believed in him, his wife, Sophie. But when fate forced him to confront his own fears and failures, he realized something profound. The very woman he had wanted to walk away from was his greatest ally all along. Through counseling, compassion, and a renewed sense of purpose, Nathan and Sophie didn't just save their marriage. They rebuilt it on a foundation of trust, growth, and a shared commitment to something greater than themselves. Their story reminds us that real love isn't just about perfect moments. It's about persevering through the darkness and having the courage to fight for the light on the other side. If Nathan and Sophie's journey moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more stories that celebrate the power of resilience, hope, and love.